All right, friends, we're back. Your favorite weekly podcast show. This is Location Weekly. This is episode number 670. We're recording on May the 22nd. And if you're watching the video version of this, you'll notice that Aubriana is away this week. And so thankfully, Karsten is joining us from our European team, my co-president here of the LBMA. So good to see you, my friend. How are you?
Hey, good to see you too. How are you? Yeah, it's great. Excellent. So summer's coming, a lot of activities. It's the end of the first event season in this year. So it feels like we are away since January. Now it's May, and so we're heading out to our around the globe trip actually very soon. So that's great, and yeah, it's good. It's busy, and yeah, weather in Europe is still there's room for improvement. I saw pictures from the beaches in Toronto, so those guys had fun on the weekend. Obviously, we not. It was more or less raining all over the weekend. Anyhow, but it's good so far. What about
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, to your point, it's been very hot here for this time of year already. It's like every day the last few days has been 25 degrees and yeah, so it's been warm. Good. Yeah, we had a long weekend. So we had fireworks the other night
Canada Day,
here
yes.
in the city, so that was great. Um, yeah, it's a busy time for sure. No question about that. And before I forget, I don't want to forget because it's May the 22nd today. It's my sister's birthday. So I'll say happy birthday to my sister. She probably never watches this, but whatever. Happy birthday, Aliyah. So there you go. Okay, we have four stories we want to cover. Carson's going to lead us off with a bit of a telecom, tech story.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as the Location-Based Marketing Association is a long time with the topic of indoor navigational positioning, this topic never ends. Obviously, nobody solved it in the right way, so there's obviously still a need to make it happen. And so, our friends from Ericsson find by using indoor navigation and indoor positioning a new way to refinance and monetize their 5G networks. So, this is what the article is telling us. So we are all aware that Google Maps is not working indoors. So you need kind of sensors or VPS systems to make it run. And Shane McClelland, he's vice president of this division, is running that at Ericsson, and he told they're using a different technology that the others are doing. So if I understood it right, they're not using DAS antennas. They're using something else to do the positioning with the 5G networks. Obviously, the point in that story is the monetization model because you need some attractive ways to use 5G indoors to make it work. For industry purposes, it's quite easy because you have this IoT devices connected with 5G, and then you can just run your whole factory. But in the consumer market and also in these campus networks, this is what they call the network operator, I guess it's very hard to find a revenue stream for 5G if you have already internet coverage in there. So, but let's see if you're deeper in that thing. So maybe we can jump into the topic of this is not a DAS antenna in the regular way, it's something else. What is it? Actually, I cannot hear you. You're muted for what reason ever.
Weird. Okay. Yeah, they call it a radio dot system. So this is something that is coming from the world of what they call small cells. So typically when you look at previous attempts of deploying this kind of technology, you have to set up these small antennas inside of a building. It broadcasts, a signal. It's a point of sight type of technology. So one antenna, pointing towards another antenna and creating this sort of connection and network that way. So they're using these radio dot technologies to do that. What's interesting about this though, and what I've read in terms of what they're offering is that they have kind of three new solutions really that they're talking about within this sort of indoor platform. So They have something called the IRU 8850, which is this radio unit. And you can deploy this one's focused on sort of medium to very large scale venues. So airports, office, big office towers, stadiums. And what I think is interesting about this, they say it can serve up to 8 venues, 8 different venues from one centralized location within a 10-kilometer fiber reach.
Wow.
So it's a big, wide area, of that it can capture. And it does, support these sort of RAN networks that they call them, as opposed to the DAS ones. So that's kind of interesting. They have a mid-tier solution for medium and small size businesses like coffee shops and chain stores as well. It's also 5G. You can connect up the radio dots, multi-gigabyte per second transmission rates. And I think the whole thing that we need to think about here, it's one thing if you're doing positioning, it's another thing if you're, trying to serve some kind of content, based on walking around or seeing something. But at the end of the day, the advantage that these 5G and 6G solutions are bringing indoors where others don't, I think, is when you need to deliver high volume, high speed content, right? It's the bandwidth we're talking about here that is the real differentiator, right? So if you're needing to move, high volume, high speed content around, this is where you need these kinds of networks, right? In order to do that, right? You're not going to do that over Wi-Fi. You're not going to do that, over Bluetooth beacons and these kinds of things that we've seen for other things. You need some sort of cellular network to do that. And then the last part, and this is the one that's, sort of the really interesting one to me, they call it the Ericsson 5G precise positioning system. So this is software enabled. And they say they can do 3D positioning with this less than 1 meter from any 5G device indoors. So again, what they're talking about here is using the SIM cards and the 5G connectivity of the phone to recognize where it is from these, radio dot
Very
positioning systems, right? So this is, again, no Wi-Fi, no sensors, no hardware, other than what you would normally be connecting to outside in GPS. You're doing the same indoors. So I think it's interesting. Obviously they're not the only one doing this, despite how the press reports on these kinds of things, but I think there's definitely a market for in scenarios where you have high volume, high content, and you need to transmit things within a building at that kind of scale. These types of radio networks are, I think, a good solution for that.
Absolutely, I'm 100% agree. And we see various technologies, and the company I work for, Harmony, is having this VPS system developed where you use the indoor scan and then use the camera. So it's a total different approach. But at the end of the day, all these solutions need the content. And this is where the LBMA is always asking for what is the use case, what do you want to deliver, what is accessible to your visitors in terms of service and also in marketing and sales. And there it comes together. And I think now we are in a phase of the industry where we see it's like this common technology. Now it's coming more and more solutions which are allowing to do this. And it's not longer an excuse not to do it. It's more like how we do it in the future and how we make it ready for them. Because it doesn't matter if I use 5G or the VPS systems to position myself. It's just a positioning service. It's about the content I want to deliver and to make myself and my company fit to deliver this kind of content, the idea behind. And if I see still outdoors where location-based technology is around and available, there's still a lot of work to do. And we see innovations from our member companies and partners more or less on a weekly basis on this. So the journey is not over for us. As I always say, it's just the beginning, but you can see clearly it's coming indoors.
Yeah, amazing. So, okay, and speaking of content, let's jump over to Singapore, and we can talk a little bit about some interesting announcements that are coming out of the Google I/O conference that just happened last week. I think it was on the 14th, over that part of the world. And I think what's interesting here is they made an announcement of a partnership between Google and the Singapore Tourism Board. around location-based augmented reality experiences. What's unique about this is they've integrated this directly into Google Maps. And so Singapore is one of only two cities in the world that's been selected for this kind of pilot integration. They already have a platform called Merly, which is an immersive adventure. So think Pokemon Go type of experience, but with their own branded sort of avatar, called Merly, which is taking you on a tour of the island and experiencing some of the tourist properties and things like this. So they launched this back in January together between the tourism board and Google. It uses Google's AR Core and Geospatial Creator. Um, so Merle's the mascot for the Singapore tourism. You get to go around and see different locations in Singapore, Victoria Theatre, the Concert Hall, the Fullerton Hotel, the Maxwell Food Center. Yeah, so they're doing some interesting things with this. They're adding more venues like retail malls and other things into this. By the end of the summer, they say, they expect to have 30 places of interest across all of Singapore. They're also connecting in Street View into this, Google Street View, into the thing. So then if you're planning trips, from outside, you can kind of preview the landmarks and attractions through an augmented reality lens. And if you're on the ground using the lens feature, you can overlay AR content on top of the physical server, what you see in the real world, with an overlay on top of that. So I think it's interesting for me, obviously the advantage here is accessibility. We all have Google Maps on our phones. We all have, access to these things already. And if these features can be made available, to enhance my tourism experience, I think it's interesting. So I like it from that point of view, in terms of simplicity and availability, and ease of use that they're going for here. I think that all makes a ton of sense to me. And before we leave the topic, and I just want to mention it. So you alluded to it at the beginning, Karsten, but we, the LBMA, that is, are coming back, to Singapore in a big way. The NRF, the National Retail Federation, has partnered up over there, and they're hosting NRF week in Singapore the week of June 10th. And we, the LBMA, will be hosting an event on June 10th in the evening, a rooftop patio networking event. So reach out to Karsten or I. If you are there in Singapore or plan to be there on June the 10th in the evening, we would love to see you in person while we're there. So any comments on the story?
Absolutely. So first of all, I love to see Google jump into that topic again. It's not the first time they're doing this. In terms of augmented reality, they had multiple trials, let's call it like this, and now they're doing a rollout in this city, which is great because it shows that there is value and there is a new media form we can play with as a tourism attraction, but also to explain something and look behind the scenes and tow the walls down who have been built by people afterwards. So those kind of things are extremely interesting, and I can understand why they choose Singapore because you have a great network all over. So you see a lot of proof of concepts and things that are right now in Singapore. It's about the network connectivity you have, even the train station and the subway somewhere. So it's all full of internet and everybody is tracked since decades. I remember time on the Mobile World Congresses 10 years ago where they showed me hidden demo of all the SIM cards moving around Singapore. And this is 10 years ago. So all the population were just tracked by the government. Anyhow, and so I love the idea and seeing this combination between location and augmentation. It's the same thing what we saw in digital billboards at the time. So, okay, how we can have this connection between a place and a media form. So coming back to our circles, yes, it's happening now with augmented reality. But from our point of view, it's just a new media form and an existing one, which you can just integrate into the location-based activities around that. So we will check this out. And yeah, see you all there. Hopefully it will be great weather. It's rainy season, I heard, so maybe the patio outside we'll figure that out. Need an umbrella?
Maybe.
All right.
So
Yeah, next story from my side. what is a podcast without artificial intelligence in our time? And our friends from Microsoft Places use AI to find the best time for a next office day. So Places is a new app they launched into Microsoft 365 and was allowed to show you what is the right time to meet your colleagues in the office, not only to predict who will come based on the bookings and the experience the AI has, but also triggered by informations you get a feed in, like your boss will have this mandatory 1 day of this team sitting together. And then you have to plan if you have enough space, because during the COVID crisis, obviously, a lot of companies and even Microsoft closed a lot of offices because they are not longer needed. But the people are not coming back into the offices as they supposed to be, like call it like this, or it maybe makes sense for the company. And we had the experience ourselves. So creativity and things like that are missing when you're only in the home office. So you have to meet with your people, but you have to plan that in the right way. In this prediction model, they integrated into the Places app, allows them just to get a better forecast, how crowded it will be, or the right people are there, or is that supposed to be the right people for your personal needs? And then it comes to a total different level, because one is forced by the boss herself and by the department you work with. You can organize that. But what if you're interested, because based on your projects you're working on, to meet other people who may work on similar things or can help you? And I think that's a brilliant example how AI can bring those people together they may not met before, and now we are more in this partner connecting thing, which is it's a great thing at the end of the day, and let's see where it guides us. And they also announced that it will be in the future part of the Microsoft Copilot for sure. So yeah, that's the story.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting use case of AI. I don't have a lot to add to the story. I think it's from a real estate and facilities management perspective. I think it's interesting to think about optimizing, your office space and how much office space you actually need, versus don't need, and can you shrink that? Can you reduce your costs in terms of the amount of space that you need to keep on hand, and manage that, more appropriately. As you were talking about these sort of, trying to coordinate, which employees will be there and, will work best together on certain projects or tasks or things that, are lining up. That I think is an interesting use case. Although, how far do we have to go from there where it's purely a work experience to, maybe we're setting, employees up to, on a dating site or something, like, because we know their habits and we know their patterns and things like that too. So, maybe we'll start to see some of these types of capabilities, bleed into some of those other types of apps that we see there. But I think in terms of workplace optimization, staffing, and space utilization, I think it's a great use case. It's very unique. I like it, and probably Microsoft is, of all the companies that could do this, is probably the best positioned in terms of everybody using Teams or everybody using different platforms today to coordinate workplace meetings and engagement. So I like it.
Yeah,
All right,
no.
final story. We talk a lot on this show about retail media networks, and it's still the hottest topic out there, I think. So we have an announcement of a partnership between two companies. One is called Zitcha, Zitcha, and the other one is called Venvee, Venvee. And so they've teamed up. And so Venvee is a company that uses spatial AI for understanding, audience measurement around these retail media networks and in-store behavior, and campaign performance, essentially. And Zitcha basically, deploys these retail media networks into the retail stores and brands, and the screens and all of that type of stuff. So they're kind of working together, to bring the Venvee analytics platform, let's call it, on top of the Zitcha retail media network deployments that are out there. Um, you know, None of this is rocket science. We talk almost every week on this show about these types of media networks and different ways to measure performance of them. We talked just recently about 7-Eleven, using specialized sensors from Sony in Japan to track, eyeballs and views and all these kinds of things on, from the screens themselves in a privacy compliant framework. So, in this case, Venvee's got, can measure the impact of ads on shopper behavior, on, which products people are looking at, pre-purchase intent at scale. Essentially, what they say they do is they create a 3D model or digital twin of the store, and then they anonymously collect data from the security cameras that are in the store from entry to exit, and where they are in the store, which products they've interacted with, which screens they were exposed to, and those kinds of things. So um, I think it's an interesting one. I mean, as a company, here at Ground Level Insights, my startup, we also have some technology on the location analytics side where we tap into security camera systems with some of our clients. I just know from that discussion how difficult it is to, get into a retailer or a brand that's willing to give you access to their camera systems. Often it ends up being you have to put your own cameras in, or our good friends at Wait Time, for example, that are doing a lot of work in stadiums and arenas analytics, where they're putting overhead cameras to look at traffic flow patterns and things like that. So I think I'll say this. I'll sum it up by saying I think the analytics are incredibly important. I think the retailers, the brands, the agencies who are using these retail media networks as advertising channels are absolutely demanding to know impressions, analytics, intent, conversion, all the things that we always look for. Um, but there's a lot of solutions out there. So, I think this is an interesting one. I would love to just see how it evolves, in terms of using a digital twin to do that.
Nothing great to add. The only thing we will have discussion on will be the term of spatial, because I'm seeing it all over now for various technologies, and the meaning of the definition is sometimes kind of confusing. So we have spatial AI, we have spatial augmented reality, we have a spatial device, and I'd love to have a conversation with the LBMA about our point of view of spatial, because we've had already in this podcast the 3 dimensions, which literally it is what it is. Yeah, so you can not say, okay, you're here a dot on a map, you are somewhere flying above the ground, and that maybe is the spatial component of the story. And let's see what this guy says. Yes, data is always good, and it's a good case. Check this out, how they develop.
Exactly. So that's it for this week, everybody. You've been listening and watching episode number 370, sorry, of Location Weekly. Thank you so much for your time. If you have story ideas or feedback, please reach out to us. We would love to hear from you, and just engage us in that way. And just as a quick reminder, again, June the 10th, both Carson and I will be in Singapore hosting an LBMA meetup there alongside the NRF event that's happening. So if you're going to be out there, please come out and join us, or ping us on LinkedIn or something, and we'll make sure you get the right information. So thanks, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you.